Welcome back to my channel. My name is Raman. I am your Office 365 guide. In today's episode, we will deploy Azure Virtual Desktop in our Azure environment. I'll start by creating a resource group. I will name it AVDRG and I'll keep the region as Central India where I'm located. I'll click on Review and Create. Okay, it has been created. I'll go to the resource group and I'll start by creating a VNet which will contain my domain controller and my host pool. I'll click on virtual network. Let's create the virtual network now. I'll select subscription, my resource group. I will give it a name, let's say VNet01. I will keep the region again as Central India. Okay. Security, I'll keep this as default. Next is IP addresses. So I'm okay with the address space /16, but I want two different subnets, one for domain controller and another one for the host pool. I will edit this one and change the name as subnet 01-DC. I don't need these much addresses, so I'll keep it to 8 for which can easily contain my domain controller here. I'll save it. I will add another subnet and name it as subnet 02 HP for host pool. The starting address should be 10.0.1.0. I don't need this much addresses, so 8 addresses would be fine for me. For the lab, next I'll click on Review and Create. It's running a validation. Now let's click on Create. While it is being deployed, I'll pause the video. Once the deployment is done, I will be back. So the deployment is done and I can see my VNet and the resource group AVDRG. Next, I will create a virtual machine which will be my domain controller. Alright, so virtual machine, yes, I will create this. I will select my subscription. The resource group, I want to keep it AVDRG. Virtual machine name, I will name it at DC01. Region, again I will go for Central India. I don't need any infrastructure redundancy for the test environment. The image is Windows 2016, should be fine. Okay, all looks good. Size B2S should be okay. Alright, I'll put a username and then a password to log into this machine. Disks, okay, I don't need premium disks, so standard hard disk is fine for the test lab. Next is networking, VNet01 DC, okay, it automatically came. Okay, all looks good. Next, okay, auto shutdown. I can configure this later, but it's a good practice to do that right away. So let's do that now. So I want this machine to be auto turned off so it doesn't consume my credits. Okay, so this is fine, this is fine. Auto updates, let's say I'll choose manual updates. Next is monitoring. This is fine. Next is advanced. I don't want to touch anything here. tags, review and create. Alrighty, let's click on create. Okay, so while it's being deployed, I'll pause the video. So the virtual machine has been created. I will click on connect and click on RDP. Let's download the RDP file. Connect. Okay. Alright, so I am on Server Manager. I'll start by clicking Add Roles and Features because I want to make this server a domain controller. So next, and next I want to install Active Directory Domain Services. Click on next, and install. So while it is being installed, I will pause the video. So ADDS installation is done on this server. Let's promote this Windows Server to a domain controller. So add a new forest. I already have a domain called freetech.tk in Azure or Office 365. I will add the same domain here so that objects from here can sync to Azure AD. Also, the host pool can add themselves to this domain controller as a domain member. Okay. Alright, it's good time to pause this video. So our domain controller setup is done. Next, we need to install AAD Connect to sync our objects from domain controller to Azure AD. You can just Google download AAD Connect and install AAD Connect from Microsoft official website. Okay, it's the first link. I have already downloaded this tool, so I'll just go ahead and download AAD Connect. This completes our AD Connect installation. Alright, so we have installed our Azure AD Connect tool. Let me verify the IP address the machine is getting. Okay, it's 10.0.0.4. I'll make a note of it. We will need this later. Now let's create some users here and sync them to Azure AD to verify if our Azure AD is working or not. I have created two users, AVD user 1 and AVD user 2. Let's see if those users are visible in our Office 365. So I can see that both of the users have been synced. So our AED Connect tool and the synchronization process is working fine. Next, what I want to do is go to my virtual network and change the DNS server. So right now this VNet is configured to use Azure provided uh, public DNS, which means that any machine within that network won't be able to locate the domain controller. So we need to make sure that our host pool, our host sessions are able to locate the domain controller within this VNet. So what we will do is we will define a custom DNS server which will be our domain controller. Optionally, what we can do as well is go to our virtual machine and select networking and network interface. So here the private IP address is 10.0.0.4, which is what we have defined in the DNS server for the VNet. Here what I want to do is give this server static primary IP. Let's click here and I will make this IP address as a static IP address for the domain controller. Okay, it is done. Now we will deploy a workspace to which users will interact with in order to access the application groups. So I will type workspace in the Azure Marketplace. Okay, create a workspace. I'll select my subscription. I'll create a new resource group. Let's say lab or EVD-WSRG. I'll click on OK. I'll give a name to this workspace. I'll say W1. Now I will select a location for this. So you might see that Central India is not visible here because it's not available for this region. So I will select another region, let's say East US, or I will say Central US. I'll click on review and create, or it's application groups. I can always register the application group later. So I will right now I'll create an empty workspace. This is fine, so I'll just click on review and create. So our workspace deployment is complete. Let's go to home. Now we will create a host pool. Let's click on Azure Virtual Desktop and I'll create a host pool. I'll select my subscription. For this I'll create a new resource group. Let's say AVD-HP1. I'll give it a name. I'll say host pool 1. It has to start with a letter or a number and must end with the letter. Okay. Host pool 1. Location. Okay, let's give it Central US, same as the workspace. I don't need validation. Preferred app group type. So here I can define whether it has to be a desktop or a remote app. For this I'll keep it as desktop. Okay, host pool type, I will say a pooled host pool. Breadth first is okay. Okay, I'll click on next. Azure Virtual Machines. I'll click on yes. I will leave the resource group as same as default to host pool. I will give this a prefix. Virtual machine location, I will keep it as Central India. Availability zones. Okay, so availability options, I don't need any redundancy as of now. Image, I will say Windows 10 multi-session. So this should be okay. 2 vCPUs. Okay, let's change the size for this test. B2S works okay for me. Number of VMs, I'll say 2. Standard, I will say hard disk is okay. Standard hard disk. Virtual network. I will keep it in a different subnet for the host pool. Network security group. Basic is okay. This is also fine. Next is domain to join. So yes, I would like to join to a Active Directory, and AD domain join UPN would be. So this is the domain admin account that I will enter, or an account which has sufficient permission to join a machine to the domain. Make sure to type the correct UPN and the password for the admin account, otherwise the host pool will not join to the domain controller. Now this is virtual machine administrator account. This is only the local admin account. So I will say local admin, and password, I'll give a password. Okay, let's click on workspace. Here I will select the workspace. Okay, so the deployment is in progress. I will pause the video. Once the deployment is done, we will resume. The host pool deployment is done. Let's see if the host pools have been joined to the domain controller. I will open my domain controller. Let's click on computers. I can see that both these machines as the host pool have been joined to the domain controller. If you remember, in one of my previous episodes I mentioned that when we create a host pool, the desktop application group is created by default. So let's check that. I'll click on Azure Virtual Desktop, come to host pools, and then click on application groups. I can see that one application group is created. However, if we see assignments, we can see that no users have been assigned to this application group. What I will do is create a security group here. Let's say AVD users. I will add the AVD users to this group. Let's run a delta sync to sync the group to the Azure AD. Okay. The AVD users group have been synced to Azure AD. Let's check the members. Okay, it has both the members that we wanted. Next, I will go to my host pool, click on application groups, open my desktop application group, click on assignments, and assign this desktop application group to our AVD users security group. Okay, let's click on add, and I will select my AVD users group. Click on select. Okay, it has been added. Now that we have assigned the AVD users access to this application group, let's check if we are able to access the desktop application group or not. I will open Internet Explorer in a private window, type in a URL aka.ms/avdweb, enter. Now it is asking me to enter my credentials. I will type avd user1 at freetech.tk. I'll put in my password. Now it's performing an authentication. So AVD service authentication is done. If I click on this desktop application group, which is a full-fledged desktop experience, I will click on allow. It should prompt me for a Windows authentication. Okay, here it is. Alright, so this is how the session desktop application group looks like. I am on a browser and I am able to access my desktop, and be it any device, be it a laptop or a mobile phone browser which supports HTML5, I will be able to access my desktop from it. If I go back to my host pool, I will just click a refresh here. Now I can see that the application groups is one. Let's click on host pool. Here I can see all information about my host pool. I can also see that active session is currently 1. Here it is. I'm able to access my desktop application. Next, I will just sign out from here. And close this window. Next, what I want to do is create a remote app application group. So if you notice, this is a complete desktop application experience. Now what if we just want a certain application to be showed to the user? So let's do that now. So let's create an application group. A remote app application group. I'll click on application groups under Azure Virtual Desktop. Click on create. Select a resource group, and it's okay if I select my host pool resource group. I'll select my host pool. The location will be default. Now I do not want a desktop app application group, because since it's already there, it's giving me a notification that a desktop app group already exists in the selected host pool. So I'll create a remote app group. I'll give it a name, let's say AVD remote app group. I'll click on next. I need to add an application. So under application source, I can select if I have a file path on a remote file. I can also use an MSIX package. So what is an MSIX package? I will elaborate in the coming videos where we will deploy MSIX app attach. For this instance, let's select start menu, and let me select a software, let's say snipping tool. Not snipping tool, let's say WordPad. And okay, all looks good. Let me click on save. Go away, please go away. Okay, next assignment. Let me assign this to the same users. So I will select AVD users. I'll click on next. I can choose my already created workspace, because a workspace can have multiple application groups. Next, next, review and create. So the application group deployment is done. Let's go to the resource. I can just verify the assignment. Okay, let's again open a private window. I will type the URL aka.ms/avdweb. It will redirect the URL to the AVD endpoint, AVD user 1 at tech.tk. I'll enter a password. Now as you can see here, it's giving the user two options. One is the desktop application and second is the remote app. I can just click on remote app. Give my credentials again. And it should launch the WordPad. Okay, so there you go. That's how you create a remote app application group, assign it to a user and access it. So guys, I hope that you were able to understand how to deploy Azure Virtual Desktop. In the coming videos, we will see the issues with the current AVD deployment and why we need FS Logics and MSIX app attach. Till then, take care and bye bye.